Welcome to Smaointe Sathairn, the Learn Irish online show which comes out every Saturday morning, in which I'm going to be talking a bit about the broader principles and ideas around learning Irish and hopefully giving you the tools to make it a lot easier for you to increase your level in speaking, listening, writing and reading in the language going forward. The odd numbered episodes, that's 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 and so on, are all going to be available for free on the Gaeilge Weekly feed, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and wherever else you might listen to the show. But to get access to the even numbered episodes as well, you'll have to sign up as a Learn Irish Online member. Patreon.com/Learn Irish Online to begin your free trial today. It's only €7 a month plus VAT from then on in, and you get access to a load of different shows, not just Smaointe Sathairn, but Ishtarish, Leirish, Ag Astrú, Button na Ró, Lífocht, Topic Breakdown, bonus episodes of Gaeilge Weekly, and so on. Links will be down below in the description. Very much hope you enjoy the show and get some benefit from it. So you're very welcome to episode number 1 of Smaointe Sathairn. As you've probably heard in the intro, this is going to be a show that's going to be coming out every Saturday. It's going to be in English. I'm not really going to be speaking as Gaeilge during the show, apart from maybe giving a few examples here and there when I'm trying to explain a concept. But I guess the idea of the show is to give advice and give help to people who are learning the language, which I presume is most people listening to Gaeilge Weekly, or certainly everyone who's listening to the Níos Shimplí or the WOD Níos Shimplí version, but in general people, especially who are members here on Learn Irish Online, if you're listening to the membership. I suppose to talk you through the bigger kind of underlying ideas. It's that kind of thing of, again, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, but teach a man how to fish and he'll never go hungry again. That in a lot of the content I make on Learn Irish Online, it's about, okay, here's how you do the Mulcaniluk. Here's how you pronounce this word if it's got a H on it. Here's 3 phrases you can use that are nice and make you sound fluent. And they're all really good. But if I just give you them, that doesn't mean all of a sudden you can speak the language to a really good level or understand it to a really good level. They're all small building blocks that you need. But ultimately, you're the one kind of that has to do the work. You're the one that has to put in the hours over the next few months or years, however long it's going to be, to get to the level you want to get to. So the idea with this show, it's Smaointe Sathairn, is just for me to give you some thoughts and some ideas on how I think it's easier to structure the language in your head, how I think it's easier to approach the language, to approach your study in terms of how you can practice and how, again, you can practice in an efficient way. A lot of people think you need to be practicing for 3 or 4 hours a day or something crazy when no one really has that time. So how can we practice almost passively during the day and almost without even trying that much, get to the end of the day and actually have learned a lot more and learned a lot more in an efficient way and be sure that it's right and understand the language better and just for things to be clearer in our head. So to give you some overall guiding principles. For those of you who don't know me and might be listening for the first time, or for those of you who maybe only follow along to bits of Gaeilge Weekly, since it is mainly Ask Gaeilge, my name is Liam. I've been teaching Irish since 2020. That's when I started to teach one-on-one. I've taught loads of different people one-on-one across the world, people living in Ireland, the UK, the US, Australia, New Zealand, Russia, Germany, Spain, and so on. People at different levels, people at different types of Irish, different reasons for learning the language, some people from scratch, some people who already had a conversational level. In early 2023, I launched Learn Irish Online as a brand and as a company, and since then we've been making a lot of different content for people who are learning the language at different levels. We have the membership you might have heard about earlier on in the intro, where we put up most of our different shows, our videos and podcast series aimed at helping people get better in writing, reading, listening and speaking in the language. But as well as that, we have a lot of different courses available over at learnirishonline.com that I've designed for people at different levels. People who are looking to get better comprehension, people who are complete beginners, people who are maybe intermediate level and looking to take kind of a step up or a level up. And a lot of different materials I've created over the years. And I still do some one-on-one teaching, although not too much nowadays. So that's my story. I've spent a lot of, I suppose, my adult life really over the last few years looking at Irish, looking how it can be better learned, looking at how other people teach it, looking at how I teach it, looking at my students, how they've learned it, what's worked, and probably even more importantly, what hasn't worked for different students, and aiming, I suppose, to break that down. And again, with a show like this, giving people the main principles in terms of what's going to work, what you need to do to actually learn the language, to get better in the language, to enjoy learning the language as well. Because if you don't enjoy it, listen, we all know, and let's be straight about something here. If you want to get to a good level in Irish and you're only a beginner now or kind of lower intermediate, you're going to have to put in a lot of hours to get there. There's no two ways around it. There's no way you could possibly get to a really good level without putting in a lot of time practicing speaking, practicing listening, and so on. So one of the keys there, and one of, I suppose, the main ideas straight away, not one we'll touch on too much today, but is that idea that you have to make the practice enjoyable for yourself in some way. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. You know, if you think about, let's say, a sport, for example, I play Gaelic football, and I'm a much better Gaelic footballer than I was when I was 10. So nowadays I can play to a much higher level than I was when I was 10. And now why? It's because I've put in a lot of hours training and playing over those 15 years since. But has it been a slog? Has it been, oh, I have to go and train again today, I have to do another hour or two, I have to keep on trying to get better? No, at no point has it been like that. It's just really been a hobby for me. So why am I so much better now than I was? Because I've put in those hours, but those hours weren't difficult to put in because it was something I was looking forward to doing. It was in a social element. I was seeing my friends when I was going training. I enjoyed playing the sport. I enjoyed running around. So it wasn't even an effort. And often with a language, we need to look at it in the same way. We need to structure our own practice and look at the way we're getting speaking time in every week and listening time in every week, and getting it in a way where it's actually something we want to do anyway. It's not a chore, or we're not going to bed thinking, oh, I haven't done my half an hour of Irish, I need to do it now, because that's not going to last. One, you're not going to enjoy it. So if you're not going to enjoy it, if you're not going to enjoy learning a language, I'll tell you, there's no point in doing it. But also, if we don't enjoy it, we won't keep it up. It's all good and well, and I'm sure people have had it with, let's say, a diet before, or going to the gym, which is always a really easy example to give, is that we say, okay, Monday I'm starting, and we go in on Monday, maybe we have that bit of motivation, we're eating okay, and we go into the gym and we do a really, really hard session, we push it really hard. But then the problem is it's not really enjoyable. You kind of build it into as part of your story. Well, it's the first day, it's got to be hard, I've got to get through it. But then by the time you get to Wednesday or the following Monday, week 1, week 2, you start thinking, oh, this isn't just enjoyable. I'm not going to keep on going back doing something again and again and again if I'm not enjoying it. So that's one big concept I wasn't even really planning on getting into today, but something to keep in mind. You have to structure your own practice and your own study. Study sounds a bit of a negative word, academic word, so I try not to use it too much, but your own practice in a way that's enjoyable for you. That could be only listening to stuff that you're actually interested in, rather than just going on TG Cahir Player, picking a random show, because, well, I wouldn't do that in English. I would never go on to RTE Player and just pick a random show and put it on to watch for entertainment. So why would I do that in a language that might even be more difficult for me to understand? Surely I should instead look at stuff that I like anyway, and then switch it in to Irish. So if I watch a lot of sports stuff, or if I watch a lot of documentaries, okay, can I find sports stuff, or can I find documentaries in Irish, rather than doing it the other way around of just finding something in Irish and then trying to watch it or consume it, actually finding something that you like and then see, can you get the Irish equivalent of that, which sometimes is easier said than done, for sure, but that's the basic idea, and that's one of the ideas in which you can make Irish more fun and the actual practice more fun and more passive in a way. Again, going back to the Gaelic football example, it's been a passive thing. It's not like when I was 10 I said, okay, over the next 15 years I want to get way better at Gaelic football and I'm going to train X amount of times a week and I'm going to play X amount of games. If I did write that down, I probably actually have done that amount of trainings and those amount of games and those amount of hours on the pitch and on my own fitness and things, but it's because I like those things anyway. And again, it was built into a bigger thing. It was built into me meeting my friends at training, going for a run to get out the house because I work from home. Okay, so it's building it into your life in a way where it's actually something you look forward to doing. Because again, if it's a chore, if it's half an hour after work where it's really formal, you're sitting down, you're studying, and some people might enjoy that, but if you don't enjoy that and you think it's not going to be something you're going to be able to keep up, it doesn't matter how much your motivation is, you will not keep it up long term after a week, a month, a year, and so on. But what I wanted to talk about today, rather than that kind of idea of enjoyment and passive learning, is more so looking at the idea of getting more speaking time into your life. I did a poll on the membership recently on Patreon, which is where you might be listening to this podcast or you might not be, looking at not so much a poll, but just a little post asking people, what's the biggest struggle? If you're learning Irish, what's the hardest thing? And although few people said it's understanding, it's just there's so many H's and R's and different speakers say different words, different ways, very tough to follow the, listening to a podcast or a radio show or whatever it might be, another person speaking to me face to face. Most people said it's actually just a lack of opportunities to speak. Either I live outside of Ireland, so I don't have anyone around me who can speak the language, or we all know even if you live in Ireland, okay, well, how many places do you actually have the opportunity to speak it? And how many situations do you have the opportunity to speak it? For most people, the answer is going to be not many. And that's all fair enough. And ultimately, the best practice you can get in relation to speaking is always going to be speaking with someone else. Okay, and doing kind of a one-on-one situation or a group situation where it's the exact same as if me and you went for a beer or for a coffee, or a few of us as a group, again, sat down at a table for dinner and we were talking, probably in English. You want that situation, but just in Irish. That's the best practice you can get if we're being honest about it. But I think what a lot of people forget is how much practice you can get in by yourself, even in terms of speaking. So what do I mean by this? Well, I work off an assumption as an Irish teacher, and I suppose I do these shows as well off an assumption that although different people have different aims when learning Irish, the most common one, and the most common one for learning any language, is people just want to get to a level where they can speak and kind of express pretty much any idea that comes to their mind. That's not crazy technical or crazy specific, but the idea is that if I want to, let's say I'm learning Italian at the moment, for example. So my goal with Italian is I want to get to a point where me and you could sit down, let's say you're an Italian speaker, a native speaker, and I can kind of express anything. So if I want to tell you that I went to a party on Saturday, I can kind of come up with that pretty quickly. And equally, if you ask me, oh, what's your favorite thing about living in Spain? I can give you my honest answer, not just the answer I know how to say, but my honest answer pretty quickly without thinking in Italian. Doesn't mean the grammar is all perfect, doesn't mean it's 100% the most natural way to say it, but that it sounds relatively natural and it's pretty easy for me to come up with, and it's not too stressful or too much work on my brain to come up with that. That's the level I want to get to. And if we think about the other side again of me sitting down, let's go back to the Irish example. So me as a fluent speaker sitting down with you who might be learning, I'm imagining another big aim for you might be that, well, if we're having a coffee and we're just chatting in Irish, that you want to be able to understand everything I say, not just everything I say, but that we could bring in any kind of random Irish speaker and you'd be able to understand not everything, but you'd be able to understand what they're asking and what they're generally going on about. I think it's good to get away from the idea of, well, I need to be able to understand every speaker and every word they use, because even in English, that's not the case. Even in English, which is my first language, often I'll sit down with someone, even someone from Ireland. They might use a word I've just never heard before in English, whether it's a more fancy word like superfluous or anything like that, or it's a slang word that I've not heard of or from their part of the country or whatever, the people they hung out with growing up, they used. Or I would always think about it in terms of as well, imagine like a Spanish student came to Ireland and decided to stay there for the next 20 years. You think, well, after 20 years, they should be able to understand everyone. But guarantee you, if you put them down to rural Kerry or up to one of the islands, Tory Islands off Donegal, and I'm not talking about Irish, I'm just talking if they were speaking English to people there, they'd find it really hard to understand, even after 20 years. Unless you're a native speaker and you've grown up through and through in that language, there's always going to be people that are going to be tough to understand. So don't worry about the kind of more extreme accents, the more extreme dialects, the more extreme speakers, I suppose, in terms of how hard they are to understand. Again, when I'm talking about this example of me and you sitting down for a coffee, I'm imagining the main thing you want to do is that it could be me, it could be one of my friends, it could be someone speaking with a different dialect, but overall, most people who I put down in front of you, you'll be able to follow along to what they're saying, you'll be able to keep a conversation going and truthfully express what you want to say. So let's break that down. What does that mean? That means that you can speak and express pretty much any idea that comes to your head, and also you can understand what's being said. So you can speak and you can understand. We'll talk more about comprehension in the next few episodes of Smaointe Sathairn, but I want to talk about speaking today. And again, this broader idea that, oh well, if I don't have people to speak with, how am I ever going to get good at it? And of course, it does take practice. But people don't realize that you can do a lot of practice by yourself. So let's say you're driving into work every morning in the van or in the car or whatever, you're getting the training. Why not be speaking to yourself in Irish during that time? You might think, Liam, I have a very basic level, or I don't have enough to do that. Perfect, even more reason to do it. Surely I would use that then as even more reason to practice and get better. So that bit of anxiety you have in terms of, oh, I can't really speak this good, or if someone started a conversation with me, I wouldn't be able to keep it in Irish. I personally, when I'm learning languages, use that anxiety or that stress or that worry to motivate me to go, right, well, I better get out of this situation pretty quickly and I better improve to the point where I can hold my own in conversation. So even if you have very basic Irish, to take an extreme example where you only know, hello, how are you, I'm good, I'm from Galway, and so on. It's Chun na Gaeilge me, but my Carablinas Fehadish, I'm 24, and even that might be tricky for you, that's fine. But literally you're there on the train, you could say to yourself, okay, perfect. This morning I'm on the train. You might think, I don't even know how to say that. Well, that's all really useful stuff. This morning, straight away, is a very useful thing to know and very important thing to know if you're going to speak any language to a decent level. So you can add that to your list, let's say, keep a list on your phone or on a piece of paper, a little notebook, and I'll come back to the list in a minute or two. You can add that in this morning. So this morning, I don't know. I am on the train. I know, it's Thame. And then on the train, air on, I don't know train. I know it's probably similar to English, but I need to get the exact spelling. So maybe I'll write that down on my list. Maybe as well, I have something else there, such as Thame. I know there's two different versions of the verb to be in Irish, if I'm translating it over. Is that tha, or is it going to be something to do with this? So straight away, you could essentially really have not much of a clue about that sentence. You're not sure what this morning is. You're not sure about I am, is it tha may, or is something may, is air on train may, and you're also not sure the spelling or the pronunciation of train. Perfect, no problem at all. So you could do this in the moment. Just take out your phone or your physical dictionary, although really on a phone on folklore.ie, folklore.ie in English, it's going to be a lot easier. And the idea then is you look that up, okay, and getting good. One of the biggest advices I can give to you if you're learning Irish is get good at using folklore.ie. It's by far and away the best online resource for learning Irish. It has everything on there, from obviously just translations, okay, what's train, what's room, or what's laptop in Irish, but as well as that, the pronunciation in the main three dialects. It has the grammar side of it. Is it masculine, feminine? How might it change with the definite article in front of it? If I look up a verb, I can click on verb beside it. I can get a load of different conjugations, past, present, future, negative for each one of those, the conditional, the imperative. The imperative is just the command if I say do this or explain something to me, and so on. If you're a Learn Irish Online member, you can go back and find the video I did looking at how to use folklore.ie and all the different features you can use on there. Just type into the search bar within Patreon folklore and it should come up. So that's something to keep in mind, and that's quite important, is getting good at using folklore.ie. But again, to go back to our example, we can say, okay, this morning, and even though this morning isn't one word, if I put in this morning into folklore.ie, it will still show me all the different sample sentences. There's thousands, if not millions, of sample sentences, and it'll show me all the ones that have this morning. I'll work through them pretty quickly or look at them and say, it always seems to be Madsen. We don't even say Madsen sho or anything. We say Madsen or Madsen in yo. for this morning. Okay, perfect. I add that to my list. I think it's much better, guys, always to use pen and paper. So always to write down on a physical piece of pen and paper. Obviously, it depends on your circumstance, and this method probably works best if you can sit down at a desk at home with pen and paper and a laptop or and a phone and do it where you're completely focused on this rather than you're on a train and some guy beside you is chatting on the phone, someone else is asking you for your ticket to inspect it or whatever else. But this is just a kind of everyday example. So then I can add that to my list. Okay, Madsen or Madsen, and I just write it down in Irish, equals, and then write it down in English afterwards. So maybe on my list it says Madsen in the morning or Madsen this morning, today morning. Then I think, okay, tá mé an train. So I can use another resource, whether it's Fuckler.ie, or even, although Google Translate isn't great, for some stuff like this for ChatGPT even, you can still get a general idea. I can put into ChatGPT. A lot of this does depend on the internet and being okay at using some of the technological stuff. But obviously, if not, you could just ask a teacher if you're doing lessons. There's always a way to find out. But if you're good at ChatGPT, at Fuckler.ie, even just okay at using them, it's going to be a lot easier. I could put into ChatGPT, why is it tá mé an train instead of an is form, a copula form as we call it? I find out that, okay, it's because I'm not saying I am the train. It's because I'm not saying I am and then a noun. I'm saying I am on the train. And then I look up, let's say, the spelling of train. Okay, it's that. So immediately, within one really kind of throwaway sentence, such as I am on the train this morning, think of how much I've learned. I've learned this morning, which is something I'll be using all the time. Maybe as well, I wasn't sure of the pronunciation of morning. I knew it was spelt Maidin, but I didn't know it was pronounced Madsen, and I've looked that up while I'm on Fuckler.ie. That's another thing I've learned that's really useful. That's the key, it's useful. I've also learned the difference between tá and is, or the basic principles around tá or is, and let's say the spelling of train, not as important, but still something you'll use, and especially if you're talking about stuff that's relevant to your everyday life. If you're on the train there going into work that morning, I presume you get the train to work every day, or most days. So it's something specific to you, and it's better to learn the stuff that's specific to you. I'm a big Formula 1 fan. While I'm learning Italian now, I try and learn a lot of the words to do with Formula 1. Tires, pit stop, strategy, front wing. And people may say, yeah, but how useful are those words? Well, they're a lot more useful to me than they might be to you. Because again, what are we talking about when we're sitting down having chats with people, or in terms of the content I'm consuming, videos, podcasts, social media? I'm consuming stuff when I'm talking about stuff I'm interested in, or stuff that's relevant to my life. So again, if you work, let's take the train example, let's say you work on the train and you're a ticket inspector. The words ticket, or the verb inspect, the word fine, they're way more important to you than they would be to other people. And again, when you're talking to people, those words are going to come up because when we meet other people, we talk about our jobs often and what went on that day in our jobs. And also even when we're listening to stuff, we're consuming stuff, it's about maybe not to do with our jobs, but about stuff we're interested in and stuff we're thinking about. So again, that's another little tip. Learn stuff that's applicable to you first. Okay? And this goes back again to the idea of it's all about making ourselves run in to all the things that are useful. So even off that one basic sentence, this morning I am on the train, straight away I've run my brain into the verb to be, the most important verb in the language, and the concept of is versus tá, and what the difference is between the two of them. Madsens, that's the time of the day. Madsen Snolna Iha, the three kind of most important time of the day words to know in terms of morning, afternoon / evening, and night. And you imagine that over the course of a few sentences, you're going to run into all the most common words. You've probably heard those stats before, and I can't give you a specific one for Irish because the research hasn't really been done on it, but you've heard the ones for different languages before, that 90% of all the words we use are from the same bank of 500. You know, that if you listen to me speaking Italian again, 90% of all those words will be from the 500 most common words. So again, that's a rough science, but that's the idea, is that when you were at school and you were learning, let's say, Italian again, or Spanish or whatever, they might have given you chapter 1 of the book, and it was about home or the family. So yeah, you learned useful words like mother and father, but then what else did you learn? You learned second cousin, semi-detached house, bungalow, words that we never really use. Think when it's the last time you used those words, even in English. But words that we are using all the time, so, because, then, excuse me, I think so, for sure, small little stuff like that that you probably weren't taught or taught at an early stage anyway, depending on your teacher and what level you were taught to in school when you did your foreign language, when you did French, German, Spanish, Italian, and so on. So this method of just speaking to yourself and making yourself run into stuff, if you're doing it even just for a few days or a few weeks, you're pretty quickly going to cover all the most important stuff. Okay, not just are you going to cover it, you're going to get used to actually using it in a sentence. Now, I appreciate it might be very slow at the start. Even just, you might be the whole train journey to even figure out, how do I say this morning I'm on the train? But really quickly, you run into a load of different important things. Let's say the next sentence, 5 times to do it, I might do. So I think we should arrive at 8 o'clock. And you think, Liam, that's too difficult. But hold on, let's break it down. What's too difficult? I think, massively important verb. We use that all the time in the language. Okay, I look it up, think. It's not Smaointe because it's not reflecting or planning, which again, folklore will tell you. So it's cap, master, shield. I can use any of those. Let's use cap. I've heard that before. It's the easiest for me. And even maybe I think, okay, well, I don't know how to put that in the present tense. Or let's say I've looked it up on folklore and I can see it's capping me or capping, but that's no good to me, really. You know, that's good for that translation. But what about the next time I need to put something in the present tense? So maybe that kind of, we put that sentence on pause and then we think, okay, let me go and find out something about the present tense now. Let me actually look up a YouTube video. How do I conjugate something in the present tense? Because again, going back to the thing I said at the start, to give someone a fish, I could give you a translation and say, listen, this is, okay, think in the present tense is capping. But then you only know cap in the present tense. What about the thousands of other verbs or hundreds of other verbs that you'll need to use every day? So if I tell you the overriding rule, and this is kind of the idea of Smaointe Sathairn, and the idea of a lot of stuff I do at Learn Irish Online, it's not about a specific word or translation. It's about knowing the overriding rule. So how do I put something in the present tense? I add on an NN ending, let's say, so capping may, meaning may, callian may, whatever all the other ones might be. And that could lead you down, okay, what's the difference between a short and long verb? Because those will be important as well. So it's about, more than anything as well, being curious. So when I see something like this morning, I'm not just skipping over it. When I see, I think, I'm not just saying, it's probably cap or something. If I'm not sure, I'm double checking it and I'm kind of asking myself, okay, well, why is it like that? Because again, once I find out, okay, in the present tense, I just had this ending, if it's like this, and this ending, if it's like that, you could give me any verb then, any root, and I could tell you how to put it in the present tense. Think what a massive advantage that is. So that's the idea. Making yourself run into stuff you don't know, and then the key is to be curious, because none of it works unless you're curious about stuff. It's the same with writing, or let's say reading. An even better example is reading an article. There might be 8 words in the first sentence you don't know, but that's fine. But the key is then, don't just skip over it and say, well, whatever. I would again use that. For me, it's that kind of anxiety or worry of, oh, what if someone says this to me and I don't know and it's a bit embarrassing, whatever. I use that as motivation to think, okay, I'm going to learn these words now and understand what this sentence means. And for the rest of my life, if those words come up again, I'll know them. Or maybe the second time they come up, I won't, but the third or fourth, I will. I'm getting closer to knowing them 100%. So that's the idea, is that, okay, if I don't know a word, I look it up and I understand the general idea behind it, and then I know it, and that makes such a difference. And you'd be amazed by this method of just speaking to yourself, whether it be in your head or out loud at home or whatever else. Obviously, if you have someone else to practice with, even better, you can do it that way, but both are still good because it's a bit of a safer environment and you can talk about what you want by yourself as well, and you don't need someone who's very patient beside you to kind of put up with what you're saying. And running into stuff that you don't know, removing that roadblock, going back to the start, and then that roadblock isn't there and you can go even further next time. And you'd be amazed by how quickly doing this, even just for 20 minutes a day, half an hour every second day, whatever, you'll pick up a lot of words. And then another key as well is going back over stuff. So I can write Malton equals this morning, great, that's fine, but will I remember that in 24 hours? Probably not, okay? So it's the idea of then looking back the next day, writing it out in a way. I think we're on pen and paper, and people like this on flashcards and stuff. I always think pen and paper are better, but do whatever you want. And again, make the practice in your own way where it's enjoyable. Cover it in English. Find some way where you can see it in English. And Ermadson, okay, that's this morning. Or as you get better, cover it in Irish. This is an even better test. And then so you just see this morning, and then your hand is covering, let's say, the Ermadson. Can you remember it's Ermadson or Madson? So that's the key. Be curious. Make yourself run into these things, and you'd be amazed by how quickly you can pick this up. And more so than that, in terms of speaking, things start coming quicker. So maybe I know, okay, Ermadson is in the morning, but if it takes me 4 or 5 seconds to come up with that, let's be honest, if me and you are having a conversation and I said, when did you go out for a coffee? And you're going, Madsen. Well, preferably we'd like to get that to a point where I say, when did you go out for a coffee? And you say, oh, Madsen, Madsen. Whatever. So it's the idea comes out faster. So if you're constantly recalling these things in your head and you're making yourself say, oh, po my Aaron Strain, or Madsen, by man sin, again, whatever, couple or Todinegen, and so an Akalum, there's someone beside me. If you're constantly making your brain say all these things, they're going to start coming like that. It's because you're using it all the time. Even if you're not speaking out loud, that's fine. You're making your brain come up with them all the time. So if someone says something to you, then you'll be able to respond quicker. That's the idea. So this was a bit longer than I expected. This is also the first episode of Smaointe Sathairn. It's also one of the first times I've spoke completely in English on a podcast. I don't do it that often, so I hope it's not too fast, and I will listen back to this and try and correct 1 or 2 things or refine obviously the podcast as it goes on. But more than happy to hear feedback from people. You can leave it, if you're listening on Spotify, for free. You can leave it in the comments below, or give me an email at liam.learnirishonline@gmail.com. Or if you're listening on the membership, obviously just on the comments below, or if you want, you can send me a DM on Patreon as well. The link for if you would like to sign up for the Patreon, if you haven't already, is down below, patreon.com/learnirishonline, and there's a free trial now available. So hopefully you enjoyed the first episode of Smaointe Sathairn, and there will be more episodes coming out from every Saturday from now on. Next week's one will only be available to Learn Irish Online members, and then in a fortnight, episode 3 will be available again for free. So all the odd numbered, in other words, every second one will be out for free on the Gaeilge Weekly feed. So that's the idea for today, guys. Plenty more of these ideas and guidelines, and I suppose broad principles around learning, not just Irish, but most of these are going to apply to any language. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll speak to you guys very soon again. Slán go fóill.